All right, Rambam Sefer Misvot. I say positive commandments. We're up to Misvot number Lamed Aleph number 31. We're going through the various positive commandments associated with the Bet HaMikdash, Mishkan slash Bet HaMikdash. We spoke about the constant bread, lechem panim, on the table. We spoke about the incense, the ketoret, the constant fire on the mizbeach, on the outside large altar. And finally, we spoke about the pile of ashes, the deshen that has to be removed from the mizbeach. Now, Mizvah Lamed Aleph, shesivanu l'shloach ha'temeim and ha'machaneh. There's a mizvah to send those who are impure by virtue of either something they contacted or a condition from the encampment. What does that mean, send them? We'll discuss. The source is it says in the Torah, and you shall send from the encampment all those who have contracted sarat or zab, which means those who are impure. For a woman, it's a menstrual issue, and for a man, it's called a drip or a leakage he has from his private area. That's a zab. Those are Torah level impurities. Examples of them. What's this encampment? There are different encampments in terms of in the desert, for instance, where they were situated relative to the Mishkan. And in Israel and Yerushalayim, when we settled in relative to the Bet HaMikdash and its confines and its walls, there's something called Machaneh Shekhinah, encampment of the divine, of God. Shehusalo the Shakot HaAsara. Outside of the encampment is where the chambers outside the courtyard that surrounds the Bet HaMikdash are. In other words, inside of those chambers, it's called the Machaneh, the encampment of God, so to speak. In other words, in a proximity to the Bet HaMikdash. Anyone who is pure, for examples that we just gave, Sarua, Zab, impure rather, cannot be within those boundaries. As is explained, the Rambam did in his introduction to the section of Mishnayot called Taharot. The Midrash explains, that term in the Pasuk is a warning, is Misvat lo ta'aseh, for those who are impure, shelo yikansu lamikdash b'tum'ah, that they shouldn't come, they're not allowed to come in the Bet HaMikdash while they're tameh. So that seems like a negative commandment. It's repeated in a different form. The pasuk is, if you have someone that's impure, for instance, he saw Khedi the night before, where he's with his wife, he had relations, he has to leave the encampment. That's the divine encampment, as we just explained. The other midrash says, command Am Yisrael, and they send from the encampment ba'aseh. That's a positive. We just use that same pesukim as a negative commandment by shalihu, when you should send out. Now they're saying positive. So the midrash there asked rhetorically, what happened to the negative commandment? They found another pasuk, they shall not defile their camp. So you see, there are several different pesukim that speak about this. Some refer to misvot lo ta'aseh, negative commandment warnings, and some aseh, the positive of sending out or making sure that the boundaries of the Bet HaMikdash are clean of those who are unclean, so to speak. Another Misvat Aseh pasuk is V'yasa, and they shall leave outside the encampment. Okay, Mizvah number 32. Lamed Bet, Lev. Those are the first and last letters of the Torah. Lev, heart. He shesivanu lichbod lechabed zera Aharon lefa'aram u'lase'am. The Misvah, to honor the offspring of Aharon HaKohen, to exalt them, to glorify them, and to prioritize them and place them in their level first and foremost in certain settings, certain contexts. And even if they refuse the honor, you have to, despite their refusal, provide the honor. Ze kulo hagedula la'el yitbarach. This honor is not theirs personally. It's Hashem's honor because He chose them. He made them His chosen segment of people to serve Him and to offer His korbanot. And based on that acquisition, honoring them is honoring Hashem. What's the source for this misvah? This is in Parashat Emor el Kohanim. You shall sanctify him. You shall elevate the Kohen because he, it says, is offering God's bread, so to speak. God's referring to the sacrifices. Ubaha perush v'kiddashto. The Hachamim explain the word, and you shall mikadesh, quote unquote, the Kohen. Lechol davar shebichdusha. That's referring to all segments of Jewish law that are called davar shebichdusha, something that is at a level of sanctity. And we'll give examples. Liftoach rishon, ulvarech rishon, v'ltol manei yafer rishon. And for him to open up first, in other words, to proceed in saying something first, in giving a blessing first, in receiving a good portion first. The Lashon Sefer, the Midrash says, "V'chidashto al korho." The word "v'chidashto" means you must sanctify him even against his will, even if he's pushing back. Lomar kizeh sivui nistavinu bo ve'en b'chirat kohen. This is not the Kohen's choice whether or not he wants to be honored. He must honor him. V'chen amru, another pasuk, kedoshim yihiu le'Elohem ham. It says kedoshim yihiu. They will be honored and sanctified, even against their will if necessary. V'hayu kodesh l'rabot, in that same pasuk, and they will be sanctified. L'rabot ba'alei mumin, even to include kohanim that are physically blemished, that can't serve in certain practices in the Bet HaMikdash. Shelo tomar ahar shelo ye'od la'akid lechem olahav. Don't say, since they can no longer offer the bread, the offering of their God, the korbanot, meaning, in other words, the last pasuk, one of the pasuk we just read said, I gave a reason for honoring them because they're makriv, they're offering the lechem of God. If they can't offer the lechem of God, the sacrificial offerings, like the blemished person can't, maybe then he's also not eligible for the honor of the kiddashto. Lama ze notan lo ma'ala. And why am I therefore honoring him? You might say that. That's what the pasuk ends up by saying, and it will be sanctified. All offspring of Aharon, whether they are full-bodied or blemished. Now, here the Rambam didn't go to the examples according to halakha that would have this misvah play out. But for instance, we know aliyot, the Kohen goes first for aliyah la Torah. That's a modern example in the context of the minyan and reading Torah. We know that they're offered many gifts. They're offered, terumah as the first offering, the first of the separation of foods that are given back from a person who profits. And we know that they're offered the honor of giving a beracha, Birkat Kohanim. And there are other examples, just routine examples in the course of life where they get to go first and were given things first. There are certain conditions that we must abide by with the Kohanim. I see. I'm sorry. In other words, there are certain conditions but the Kohen has to be eligible for this honor. And it's explained in different places. This dispersed sources in the Gemara, Shabbat, Bechorot, V'zulatam, throughout Shas, there are mentionings of this Misvot's obligation. Are these two Misvot took a bit of time? So I think we're going to stop here at Misvot Lamed Bet today. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen. Amen.